Hello and welcome to World Talks. I'm your host, Aisha Bajam. Let's get into it. Russia's constant attacks have forced foreign carriers to completely suspend calls at the Greater Odesa port. And just like in 2022, Moscow is bombarding Odessa in an attempt to cut Ukraine off from the Black Sea. And attacks on the port killed 28 people in the first 3 weeks of July alone. And just last night, another strike hit the port, damaging infrastructure and knocking out power to thousands of residents. Now, it's also crucial to note that the halt in maritime exports comes during a peak of the harvest season. And to talk about how the paralysis of Odessa's port is hitting Ukraine's economy, we have here Volodymyr Dubovyk, Senior Fellow at the Center for European Policy Analysis. Hello, Professor. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hello. Thank you for inviting me.
So, Professor, tell us, how does the paralysis of Odessa's port hitting Ukraine's economy?
It's hitting it very hard because Ukraine's economy very much depends on this route of transportation of goods from Odessa and inner Ukraine to the rest of the world and vice versa. And right now we are dealing indeed with this Russia-instrumented artificial blockade of Odessa and other big ports in the area. Which is similar to what we had back in 2022, between the start of the full-scale invasion in February and all the way to July of 2022. Since then, there was some transportation and goods were carried, and there was a Black Sea corridor, transport corridor, a shipping corridor established. It wasn't still a usual corridor, which would have a direct line, say, from Odessa to Istanbul and to the Straits, to the Bosporus. Right now, most of the ships were following the route which would go through the territorial waters of Romania, and then Bulgaria, and then Turkey. But anyway, until recent, Russia did not strike or almost did not strike those ships. Now they strike them often, regardless of which flag is carried by this particular ship or vessel. Some people got already injured or even killed, some sailors on those ships. So, of course, this is not a situation where you can have ships coming into southern Ukrainian ports or leaving them. So we are basically dealing with another Russia-orchestrated blockade, which hits Ukraine hard because we need to actually carry out the sunflower oil and grain and everything, and not even that, because even like a steel from regions up north and to the east of Odessa, many factories I've been told, and I've been hearing that many plants and mines have been paused now and basically shut down for a while because there is no way to carry out the goods. So it's not only agriculture goods, but many other goods. So in situations when Ukrainian economy is hammered, strongly by Russia, any incomes into the budget are welcome. And right now, this is becoming problematic.
And, sir, so the systematic attacks are a new thing because Russia was sporadically attacking Ukraine's Odessa region, but now, just like you said, they are doing so systematically. So what changed since July? Why is it happening right now?
You're quite right. I think that Russia felt that Ukraine might be gaining some positive momentum. There's been a lot of talk about that. How, due to the asymmetric warfare strikes that Ukraine delivers against facilities and various targets in Russia, Ukraine has been actually recapturing initiative in some way, at least in this air warfare. But Russia didn't want to let Ukraine do it. So basically, we are seeing now strikes not only at the port infrastructure, on both the Black Sea and actually on the Danube, which is a major alternative way for Ukraine right now, or ever. If you can't do sea, you try the biggest river, and what is bigger than Danube right there. But also they've been striking the vessels belonging to various countries. So this is deliberate policy. This is basically a way to tell that we have an escalation edge, that we have other levers, and we can actually use them against Ukraine on the part of Russia. This is also a message to the West that Ukraine is not winning and Russia is not losing. So Russia has some methods in reserve, and that's what they are doing. They actually revenging Ukraine in a way, but also showing to Ukraine that it's fragile, that the West cannot support it. And of course, like everywhere else, like in the sky above the capital of Kiev, same thing in Odessa, we don't have protection right now against Russian ballistic missiles. We can still protect ourselves against other types of missiles and drones, but not ballistic missiles because there are no Patriot missiles left in Ukraine.
So 90% of this grain was passing through Odessa, though. Where is this grain going to find its suppliers? How is it going to be moving? What is the plan B here? Which countries is Ukraine thinking of using as an alternative route?
Well, the first thing is we've been taught by the experience of 2022. Yes, it's going to all sorts of places in various parts and corners of the world, and from Sri Lanka to Southern Africa and beyond. Because we found out back in 22 that the food security been damaged by Russian blockade of Ukrainian coast. And them not receiving Ukrainian agricultural products, people around the world. Some places there was a shortage of agricultural products, in other places it was available but for much higher price. So that led to a very serious, dire challenge to international global food security, really. At that point of time, Turkey, as one of the major regional powers, intervened and mediated, and there was some kind of grain trade agreement negotiated, and it was in place for a while before Russia left it. And since then, it was just a Ukraine-led Black Sea transportation corridor, which is now in danger. So it's a big problem.
What about the Ukrainian?
Yes.
The European? What about the European corridors, Professor? Last time I remember that they were also using corridors through Poland, for instance.
We did, but this is not a good alternate in the sense that you cannot carry too much by any alternative routes or methods of transportation. There is nothing that compares to a huge sea ship or vessel. The smaller river boats can't carry as much trains and tracks or, say, cars on the road, even less so. And it becomes more long way, and it becomes more expensive way of transportation. And just the scale of it, the scale of what is being transported, they just can't carry enough. So Ukraine is basically in a situation when there is no good alternative. Of course, we're going to use this alternative ways of transportation of goods into Ukraine and outside of Ukraine, but they can't quite substitute the sea transportation routes. Not to mention that Russia also strikes those. For instance, Russia struck with the recent attacks. They struck the major border crossing between Ukraine and Moldova. They struck on a number of occasions a major ferry between Ukraine and Moldova across the Danube River. And like I told you, they also struck major Ukrainian ports of Odessa region on the Danube River on quite a few occasions. So they're basically hell-bent on trying to isolate Ukraine fully in terms of disabling us from ability, from being able to carry out those goals.
Indeed, but at the same time, in 2023-24, Ukraine's Navy did manage somehow to open a protected maritime corridor and move over 168 million tons of cargo despite these Russian attacks. So why can't that be replicated now?
Those attacks in those times were not as systemic, not as massive, and Russians basically didn't attack, for the most part, international vessels belonging to other countries that transport goods into Ukraine and out of Ukraine. And right now they are indiscriminately basically attacking those ships. And there is one vessel, for instance, with the flag of Liberia, which was attacked 3 times by Russian missiles in recent days, even when there was no cargo on it and no crew already on it, but Russians still attacked it. So the tactic by Russians is basically to impose fear for everyone, and of course the major insurance underwriters for the international trade. They're not underwriting any trade in this region because the danger is just too big. Ukrainian Navy is striking back, or Ukrainian drones attacking Russian ships on a massive scale as well. So the travel for them or transportation for them is also not without danger, not without problems. But we cannot prevent Russia from striking particular facilities and vessels of their choosing, of their liking. We lack resources of denying Russia opportunity to carry out those attacks.
Indeed, because of those reasons that you have just mentioned, that international vessels are being attacked, those vessel owners have halted their operations and they're waiting to see how the situation unfolds. What new solutions can Ukraine find? So what solutions can Ukraine find? How can shipping actually be restored? Is this only a problem of air defense? But yes, just the basis question, what solution can Ukraine find to mitigate this problem?
It is a problem. You're right. It is a problem. Air defense partially. If we have a better means to protect ourselves, we would probably be able to protect ports of Odessa and others, and the port facilities and infrastructure better than we do right now. Against the ballistic missiles, we're basically defenseless. In terms of ships, well, there is no practical way of protecting them. If you have dozens of ships coming in and out, of course, you cannot, install the proper air defense on board of each ship. Even the major Navy assets of Russia, for instance, been attacked and sunk by Ukrainians, despite them having air defense protection. So the civilian cargo vessels, of course, you cannot protect to the extent that Russia is sending missiles and drones to attack them. So basically, this is becoming a fight, which reminds me of the fight of two boxers, which land heavy blows on each other without actually any adequate protection. Because, of course, Ukraine continues to strike facilities in Russia, and Russia can hardly protect them as well. But who will give up first? Who in this war of attrition in the air warfare, who will give up first? Who will basically say, okay, enough is enough? Or will someone intervene? Or maybe international community would apply more pressure on Russia, being afraid of the threats to the food security.
So indeed, just on that, you just spoke about international actors. So is this a possibility, is this a problem that can only be solved by air defense, or actually are we looking at some diplomatic solutions that could be underway here? Last time the UN stepped in with Turkey and there was a grain deal that was struck. I mean, it wasn't kept for too long, but still there were some moderators there. So is there a diplomatic campaign underway, Professor, that we know of?
Not right now, but one can assume if the situation continues as it is right now, then we would have some diplomatic campaign. The problem is that Russia would probably use it for their own benefit. For instance, they would probably continue territorial demands to Ukraine. They might also demand that the sanctions imposed on Russia be taken off and elevated. So there might be different conditions on their part. They might say, okay, we're going to stop shelling the ships and the ports in Ukraine, but here's what we want in return. So this is a difficult situation where one has to assess, what kind of conditions can you actually satisfy, and what is not something which we can satisfy.
Indeed. Thank you so much, Professor, for all of your insights and for joining us on TVP World. And thank you for watching this edition of World Talks. See you again for more news and analysis. I'm Aisha Bajam. Thank you.